Hi, the population I have chosen is women who are re-entering society after being in prison in the state of Georgia. My name is Lauren Segrist, and I will be presenting this slideshow. Many of us have seen a movie or television show that illustrates someone being released from prison as a guard hands them a bus ticket and a couple of dollars. Unfortunately, this does not seem to be very far from the truth for many women being released from the Georgia Department of Corrections, or the GDC. Since 2008, women's admissions to Georgia jails and prisons have increased both as a total number and as a proportion of all jail admissions. Women now make up almost 1 out of every 4 jail admissions. If the number of women entering the GDC is continuing to rise, then it would only make sense that the number of women leaving the GDC is going to continue to rise as well. While a lot of people, especially those without a support system, have trouble re-entering society after their release, women seem to have an even harder time. Women have a higher likelihood of experiencing some form of trauma, whether physical or sexual, in their early lives prior to entering the GDC. Since there is a direct link between poor mental health and trouble re-entering society, it makes sense that women are having a harder time. Trauma is a major threat to women becoming incarcerated in the first place. In a recent study, it was found that women were more likely to report having a history of sexual and emotional abuse than men, though men were slightly more likely to have been physically abused. Working through trauma while incarcerated could be one way to help women re-entering society. There have historically been programs to help men who leave jails and prisons, but since the rise in women's admissions, a lot of the programs to help women are in the infancy stage. The bulk of research on inmates that have been part of the criminal justice system in Georgia has been focused on men and not women. This is not surprising, however, because for some time, criminologists have pointed out that women experience unique pathways into crime. Any program that was invented for men can be tweaked slightly to serve women just as well. Women deserve a positive way to be reintroduced into society. Georgia has many programs to help women go from life in prison to life on the outside. The Georgia Department of Community Affairs has a program called the Reentry Partnership Housing Program, which provides housing to individuals who are released on parole or probation and do not have plans for housing. Not only does this program provide housing, it also provides access to food. It is a short-term program, up to 6 months, and is intended to help provide a clean slate for those leaving the Department of Corrections and collaborates with other community resources. Another program that the state of Georgia offers is the Prison Reentry Initiative. This is a program that helps people re-entering society to obtain employment, connect with their families, and rejoin their communities. Women who are being released back into their communities know what is helpful for them, and having more interaction with women at first seems like a reasonable request. After the initial release, I think it would be beneficial to make sure that there is a safe place for women to stay. This is where churches or community centers could be used. Unfortunately, just having a criminal record makes it harder for women to re-enter society, since when applying for housing or jobs, one must check that dreaded box that indicates you have done time in either jail or prison. As we know, if you lie on a job application, especially about your criminal history, you are extremely unlikely to be hired or fired if you started working before your background check was received. At the shelter, I imagine, meetings about housing and jobs could be held by experts in the field, and classes regarding finances, budgets, resume writing, and more would be taught. One of the main complaints about programs implemented for release from incarceration is that there are not more women-focused and women-led programs. Since there are already programs in place, these programs can change whom they have as the face when dealing specifically with women, or the new programs that can build off of others and staff new programs with primarily women, and have women be the ones who work in the community with those who have been recently released from incarceration. The fact that most women offenders have been incarcerated more than once signifies that recidivism is an important issue with female parolees. Something else that should be looked at is privilege, whether it be based on race, gender, or socioeconomic status. Currently, 1 in 5 Black people born in 2001 is likely to be incarcerated in their lifetime, compared to 1 in 10 Latino people and 1 in 29 white people. Since the recidivism rate in Georgia is around 60%, another program called New Beginnings has been started to help lower that number in our state. This program found a number of reasons that recidivism is so high in Georgia, including substance misuse, mental health conditions, limited education, and the inability to find housing. In a previous study of individuals who have been incarcerated, participants reported they had avoided disclosure of their criminal histories on job applications in an attempt to avoid rejection based on their ex-inmate status. Georgia is the first state in the South to ban the box on applications for state employment. However, this does not apply for private companies or businesses. There is currently a program in Georgia called the Transition from Prison to the Community Initiative, launched in 2001 by the National Institute of Corrections. It represents perhaps the most extensive effort to date to facilitate successful reentry. This program assesses the entire process that women experience from arrest to release, and takes this into account when trying to help the formerly incarcerated re-enter society. Another policy that Georgia has in effect is part of the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. This department has a program that helps individuals released under supervision a chance at housing. Their goal is to provide short-term housing for up to 6 months of assistance to help stabilize an individual's reentry process and enhance her ability to remain crime-free. Since housing is a large part of a successful, sustainable introduction into the community, this policy offers something necessary for reentry. Additionally, the Georgia Center for Opportunity advocates for those recently released to find employment and reconnect with their community. This initiative is based on the idea of a three-legged stool. They work to increase employment opportunities, encourage returning citizens to repay their debts, and promote reforms to the criminal justice system. One way they try to make finding employment easier is by lifting driver's license suspensions for those who have not committed a driving-related crime, and reinstating driver's licenses that were suspended for non-payment of child support. This is helpful for a couple of reasons. One, transportation can be a huge barrier to finding employment. If you cannot drive to your place of employment, there is no way for you to stay employed. Also, you cannot be hired if you cannot show proof of your identity and your legal status. No woman thinks they will end up incarcerated, and no woman wants to spend time in jail or prison. But this is the reality for many women in Georgia. With numbers climbing instead of dropping, the programs that are in place are helpful, but may not be helping all women. The goal should be that all women are able to receive the same benefits when re-entering society. Knowing that the percentage of jail admissions is higher in rural areas where help may not be as accessible as it is in major cities, this should be a concern for all involved in changing the way the system works. The best place to start would truly be criminal justice reform. However, I believe that is a long way off, especially for people of color. With the discrepancies in charges and sentences for women based on race and ethnicity, specifically in the South, the macro population that needs the most help is anyone who is entangled in the criminal justice system. Until then, looking ahead at what women need when rejoining their communities is the best way to begin.